Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Watchlist Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Boyer. Today I'm joined by YouTuber TheRealSullyG, aka Gavin. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a while since we talked, but
I thought last night it's been 6 years.
yeah. I think literally the last time I saw you in person was it was my high school graduation, and you were working camera, and I was like, "Hey,
Yep.
Gavin, you're doing a good job," and
Yep.
like we thumbs up, and then next thing I know, you got 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. So
It is crazy how life works out.
it's crazy. Yeah. So I guess just what have you been up to since mass media class and the morning announcements and all that?
So, I graduated high school in 2016, and then I attended Ithaca College for 4 years. I just graduated, as you could say,
Right.
virtually a couple days ago, even. So I studied film and photo. I had a major in cinema production, and starting early freshman year, I started making YouTube videos on the side just to kind of keep me occupied in the free time that I had while I was just sitting around my dorm, and ultimately that turned into what is now my job at the moment.
That's
So
insane. Yeah.
it started as a little hobby, and it kind of took off. And every day I wake up and say, "Oh, well, this is probably the last day that I'm able to do this." And then every day I wake up the next day and I'm like, "Oh, I'm still doing this, aren't I?"
Yeah, it's always like I've been keeping up with your growth because you always share whenever you hit like a new milestone with like subscribers to the channel and any like new project you got going on, and like you're just perpetually like growing all the time. It's insane.
Yeah, it's mind blowing. Currently the channel's slowing down a bit, which is fine. 3 years is a long time, but yeah, I'm still amazed every day that I can wake up and make these silly YouTube videos and call it a living.
I think that's the ultimate dream of
It's
anyone
the
who
dream.
wants to make videos for.
Oh yeah, that was the dream when I was little. That was I was always like, I want to be a YouTuber, knowing that would never happen, but here we are.
Yeah, here we are. So I guess, let's go back to that. So one thing that I always ask anybody involved in video production is whenever I listen to like interviews with directors or editors or anyone who's like really sort of involved with like movies or television, they always sort of cite like this one particular moment or this one movie or this one show that like made them inspired or like it flipped that switch where it goes from a hobby to like, no, that's what I have to do for the rest of my life. So what was that moment or what was that series of events like for you?
Yeah, I can't say that there was ever one particular moment that like triggered it for me. As long as I can remember, I used to use my mom's old camcorder, just ran off little cassette tapes. I would take that and I would record my own little skits and videos, and I found out that there were in-camera effects. You could do grayscale and sepia or inverted colors, and so at that point I was like, that's crazy. that's a lot of stuff that I wasn't prepared that you could do. And so I think that's kind of started when I was like, editing is something that I'm interested in, is when just even those in-camera effects, it added a little flair to the video that otherwise wouldn't be there. And so I was like, maybe that's something I want to try. And years later I started working in Windows Movie Maker, and then slowly move your way up and eventually get to Premiere Elements, which was just an even lighter version of Premiere that came on a CD-ROM.
Right.
And then I think I moved from that to Final Cut, and Final Cut to Premiere and After Effects, where I am now. But yeah, I've been making videos for as long as I can remember. I always uploaded them to Facebook as my platform to share, just so my friends could see them, because I was too chicken to upload them to YouTube, because I couldn't take the criticism. So I knew Facebook was a place where like 10 people would see it and they'd all be like, "This is great, good job, Gavin." And I'm like, "Thanks." And then I remember I did upload. I had a YouTube channel before this one that I uploaded like I forget what kind of video. I think it was like a drum cover because I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my YouTube channel. And I got so many comments that were like, "This is the worst thing ever. You're terrible." And I muted the comments. I just turned off comments on that video. So I'm like, there, no one can criticize me anymore. So it went from like me being in this like echo chamber of like, hey, tell me my videos are good, to me putting my content out there and going, you know, let's see what other people have to think. Let's kind of try to improve what I'm doing, rather than just say I'm the best, and because I know I'm not. And so yeah, I mean, YouTube was just kind of the next step in that process, and you know, I've been watching YouTube videos ever since. I mean, when YouTube came around, I was like the prime age for just watching up and coming YouTubers like Fred. I mean, that was the big thing back then.
I think that was like our whole generation. Like Fred was like the thing to aspire to when we got interested in videos and
exactly.
all that.
I know I have on an old hard drive my own Fred type videos. You know, like sped up voice. I mean, I guarantee they're awful. But it was basically me trying to mimic every single YouTuber I found. I'm sure I have dozens and dozens of videos that you can trace back, like, oh, that's an obvious inspiration from this YouTuber and that YouTuber. And so it was always just less so like, I mean, obviously I like films and stuff, but what really like inspired me to do my filmmaking was definitely YouTube, since I was kind of brought up on that generation.
Right. I think that's a big thing for anyone involved in video today, like that's around our age group, is like, because for me, I always looked at movies as like, oh man, that'd be really cool to do something like that, but that's so far away and so inaccessible, and YouTube kind of bridged that gap, if that makes any sense. Like,
absolutely.
It says no, it's possible, and here's your first stepping stone and all that. And I totally agree with like the whole copying, well, not necessarily copying, but like borrowing the influences and like sort of twisting them into your own thing. That's exactly how I started on my first YouTube channel. Me and my friends were doing like horrible rip-offs of like the Angry Video Game Nerd and Nostalgia Critic and all that.
Of course.
And then it eventually grew into what it is now. But so then, yeah, speaking of like channel growth and all that, so when did you decide to make that jump from like the Fred, like the really early stages of Fred videos to these drum covers to now I hope I'm pronouncing this right, but the automaton covers? Is that how you say it?
It's pronounced automaton.
Automaton.
To my knowledge, I mean, who knows? Maybe I've been pronouncing it wrong for the past 3 years, but no one has corrected me, so I believe it's correct.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, I think, I mean, if we're talking specifically automaton covers, February of 2017 was when I made the first one.
What sparked that interest? Like in wanting to do that?
Yeah, fun story. I was home for winter break that winter, like January of 2017, and I came across a video on Reddit that was just a really short video of someone playing, I don't know what song in particular, I'm sure I could find it, on the automaton, and I had never seen one before. And I was like, that's hysterical. And at that point, I had been doing YouTube for a couple months. And I mean, obviously, I think I had maybe 200, 300 subscribers. And I was still trying to kind of find what my channel was. If you look back at that time period, I was doing a bunch of different types of videos. All kind of revolving around music, because that was something I was kind of getting into, is making my own music and figuring that stuff out. But I was still trying to find kind of what would define my channel. And anyway, I said, half jokingly but half serious, I brought up to my parents, I said, when I get my first check from YouTube, which was going to be a while still, because I mean, I think there's like a $50 or $100 threshold you have to reach before they pay you out anything.
Yep.
And it was like at that point I was making pennies on my video, which at the time I thought was amazing. I'm like, I made like 15 cents off this video, and that's real money. That's real money off of a silly video I made. So I was like, when I get my first check from YouTube, I'm gonna buy an automaton, and obviously that would have taken probably years of work to get that check. And so I back at college in February, on or around Valentine's Day, I got a package shipped from my parents, and she was like, "You're not allowed to open it until you like FaceTime me because I want to be there." And sure enough, she had just bit the bullet and bought an automaton for me, knowing that I would never gonna be able to get. And I'm like, first of all, I was amazed that she remembered. I mean, it wasn't something I made a big deal of. It was just a throwaway comment one night in January, and she remembered that. And so I threw around a couple ideas with the automaton, a couple video ideas. I think the first idea was Bohemian Rhapsody, which I ended up tackling months later.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did a video that was Take on Me, but the automaton wasn't prominently featured. And then I was like, okay, let's just do an all automaton cover of Take on Me by Aha. And I mean, I look back and I laugh because I think I probably put 5 hours of work maybe total. And I mean, it was a one night thing. I started at 7 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
and by the time I went to bed, I had uploaded the video. Because at that time, I mean, I'm not going to put in 25 hours of work on a video that 5 people are going to see. I only had 200 subscribers, so
right.
I put the video out, and I wish I could say, I went to bed and I woke up the next morning and I was famous. No, the video, I think at first did generally better than most of my other videos. I mean, people were interested in it, but I mean, we're still talking maybe 1,000 views.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, nothing
But still,
huge.
that must have felt amazing either way.
Oh, it was great, but I mean, I didn't even take the hint. I wasn't even like, there's something here. I was like, that was fun. Now let's move on. So you can actually see there's a gap in my channel. There's the first automaton cover, and then more videos of me trying to figure out what to do on my channel.
Mm-hmm.
But then one night, someone posted to Reddit, in a Reddit thread, there was just, on r/videos, there was just a video of, I think, people playing child's instruments to a rock song or something.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the top tier comments was, "Oh, this is my favorite song played on a kid's instrument," or something like that. And they linked to my Take on Me video.
Oh, wow.
And for some reason, I mean, just the timing, the people they upvoted that comment to the top. And so all of a sudden I was seeing wait, why does this video have 10,000 views? And the next morning I'm like, this has 50,000 views. What's going on here? And so
That's so crazy.
I was like, maybe I should take note and do one more automaton cover and then move on again. And I did, technically I did Mbop by Hanson, but I don't actually consider that one of my automaton covers because it was, again, thrown together and it wasn't traditional my editing style. So I'm like, I don't even consider that one, but I did that, and I think I might have done another video or two in between. But then that Take on Me video really started taking off. I mean, then we hit 100,000 views or something, and I'm like, this is huge for me. I'll make one more cover, and people challenged me to make Through the Fire and Flames, which
wow.
is a notoriously impossible song. So I did it editing wise, that I only played one note at a time in each video, and there were a billion squares lighting up. And I was like, there we go, I'm done. And I uploaded it, and that video did well immediately. People started taking interest, and I was like, all right, I think I have one more idea in mind. And then one more idea. I think I have one more, and I'm here 3 years later, still playing with these toys. I mean, I keep saying one more, and I think I'm 83 videos in now.
83 videos and a couple online albums and
yeah, I've released
all sorts of stuff.
3 full-length albums, 2 Christmas albums. Oh God, it's absolutely ridiculous when you sit back and think about it, that this instrument that was never supposed to be taken seriously, I'm why has this? What has my life come to?
But yeah, I mean, the universe just has a funny way of working out that way, where it's like the thing that you least expect is what really takes off and really lets you make a name for yourself. Like, I mean, like who would have guessed like you go from a viral post on Reddit to all of a sudden I forget which country it was, but it was like some Spanish SpongeBob Facebook page and Jack's Films and all that. Like,
yeah, I mean,
crazy.
the actual Nickelodeon, U.S. Nickelodeon reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we want to repost your Sweet Victory cover, but we need you to work with us to get us a version that we can post." And so worked with them a bit. That was awesome. Jack's Films, a huge influence when I was coming up on YouTube and still making videos. So I mean, that's incredible that I have like a partnership with him now. That's amazing. Yes, I think you're thinking Spain's Got Talent reached out to me.
Yeah. That's
recently.
What it was.
I'm like, they were like, "Hey, in like 2 weeks, do you want to fly out and do this?" And I'm like, we're kind of in the middle of a pandemic, so I don't think I can. And they were like, "Oh, do you live in the U.S.?" I'm like, I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, my YouTube channel says so I'm like, yes, I live in the U.S. They're like, yeah, you probably might not be able to, but if you can, I'm like, no, I'm not coming out. I don't speak Spanish. I will not survive on that type of talent show. I'm like, thank you for the offer, but I will politely decline.
That's insane though. Like, but yeah, no, it's just crazy how things snowball like that. Like,
it's absolutely insane.
And every time I'm not usually someone who name drops, but that your channel has like sort of popped up in like other areas of my life with people who don't even know you personally, being like, "Oh, you should check out these videos. This is hilarious." And I'm like, "Hey, fun story. I know that guy." Yeah, but oh,
that's funny. I love when I occasionally get those kind of stories from my friends. They'll Facebook message me or something and say, "Hey, you'll never believe this. My friend just sent me one of your videos." I'd be like, "Oh, I'll tell him I said hi. Tell him I said thanks for watching."
Man, it's just insane. But
absolutely.
So I should have done a little bit more research on stuff that you've done lately before we started this. But what was your most recent cover you did?
Most recent, I mean, as of recording, I put out. There's a song that's popular like, meme culture right now, Baka Mitai. It's also known as the Dame Dane meme. It's
right.
Yeah, so I covered that last week, and then I have a new video that's releasing tomorrow, but by the time this comes out, it'll probably be a very old meme. It's right now there's this Stick Bug song from a Roblox game, I believe.
Yep.
For some reason that's a really, really hot meme right now, and so I was able to 1 week get that cover finished, so I finished that. That'll be posted tomorrow, so fingers crossed it does well.
So yeah, well then yeah, for those listening, if there's somehow any weird crossover of people who watch me but yet don't watch you, then you guys should definitely go check that out, because that video will definitely be out, and probably a few more by the time this gets posted. So definitely subscribe to TheRealSullyG if you haven't somehow already.
Shameless plug.
Exactly. But so what? I guess going off of that, like what sort of when you're sitting down to think of like what should I cover, what should my next video be, like how do you, is it like, because you mentioned memes there, is it how much of it is like this is just a song that I would want to tackle, and here's what the popular meme is of the time that I know people will enjoy?
Yeah, I think I would say I very rarely do songs that I'm like, I just really want to do this song. I mean, I never do songs that I don't want to do, but more often than I always say I read every comment on my YouTube videos, and I always heard bigger YouTubers say that I read all the comments. I'm like, no, you don't. No one does that. But I realize that okay, it is something that it's like you are looking for that feedback. You are looking for those suggestions. So it's something that I've made to a point to not take advantage of that audience and make sure that I'm listening to their input.
Right.
And so I'm reading all the comments, and so the main thing to look for is that if there's a general consensus, as in a lot of comments saying independently across either different videos or just at different time frames, oh, you got to cover this song. If a lot of different people are saying it, I'm like, okay, I think I can gauge that there's a pretty good interest in my audience, or that it's a really popular song or a meme at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's what I for this stick bug song. People would be like, "Oh, you gotta cover the stick bug song." I'm like, "All right, I'll look into it," because I'm like, I don't know what this is. People have to educate me on meme culture often, because I'm like, I try to keep up to speed, but then there are some really weird memes that come out that I'm like, I who could have predicted this?
Exactly, yeah.
So I mean, yeah. So more often than not, it's really just me reaching out. I'll reach out on Twitter, on YouTube, and just basically beg. I'm like, give me ideas. I have a deadline to meet. I'm like, I put out a video every 2 weeks at least, and so I'm like, I need a video idea. I need to start making a video now, no matter what it is.
So you mentioned 2 weeks. How long? So let's say you get the idea, and then how long does that take? Because your production like, I mean, I'm not that skilled in After Effects, so I'm sure, like, for someone like you, it goes by much faster. But how long between getting the idea and having a finished video does it usually take you to do? What's that process like?
It can vary. I mean, I try to give myself 2 weeks usually, because that is like what I found is usually the minimum I can do a video in, from like, because I'll post a video on a Monday, and then 2 Mondays later the new video will be out. So, but I found, because now I'm not in college anymore, I'm not doing any college work on the side, over the past 4 weeks, tomorrow will be my 4th video in 4 weeks. So,
oh wow.
It's like I'm finding that it might be possible to do them faster, but again, that kind of depends on the scale of the video. Like, these past 4 videos, I've just happened to, be able to finish. This one that I'm releasing tomorrow wasn't necessarily to be posted tomorrow, but I finished it early this morning, and I'm like, I'm not going to just keep it in the can for 2 weeks if it's really relevant right now.
Right, yeah.
So I mean, some videos, I mean, especially the ones that are like heavily animated, like 2D animation, those take me forever. So I mean, those I need a full 2 weeks to do. But other ones that are more basic or more simple, when you look at it, I can do about a week, but no less than a week. A week is the absolute minimum, and then 2 weeks is on the far edge of things. Although I will say Bohemian Rhapsody back in 2017 took me, I think, 3 months, because I was working an actual job at the time, and so I only got, like, I think 2 to 3 hours every night to work on it, and maybe less. And back then I still didn't know 100% what I was doing, so that took way longer than it should have. Now I could probably do it in 2 weeks, but that one took 3 months, just because I was, as they say, I had a real job. YouTube's not a real job. I had a real job at the time.
That's true. So Bohemian Rhapsody you'd say that's probably the most complicated one you've done, or is that just in context of, like, your skill then, or your time available then and versus now?
I mean, generally it was pretty complicated, also because I was only using Final Cut Pro, and it had, like, a lot of tracking and green screen and I mean, it was absolutely a monster that should not be done in Final Cut, but I did it because I'm an idiot. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty complicated. I don't know if I would say to this day, I mean, it's a good question. I don't know if it's the most complicated video I have. Definitely at the time it was just, everything was going against me, that it was like, it just took that long. And also I didn't view YouTube as a main priority, so I just wasn't putting as much time into it, because again, it was a small channel still back then. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure I've done more complicated things since then, but that one sticks out in my mind as just an absolute monster to edit. Right.
So then which one would you say is, I mean, obviously you wouldn't put out something that you're, like, just sort of like, oh, I need something to put out, like, I have this one that I'm not super happy with, but what would you say is the one that you're, like, most proud of out of all of the ones you've done so far?
I absolutely hate that question, because I never have a good answer. I agree with this. I mean, I always make sure that it's like, if I ever made a video that I was not happy with, I would not put it out. Because there have been many Automaton videos that either the concept gets changed a week into production because I realize it's not turning out how I liked it to look. So it's like I have to reimagine the entire thing with a week to go, or some just get scrapped entirely. And change to a different idea because I don't like how it's coming out. But favorite video, it varies. I tend to like videos just I think my staple answer is the full version of Take on Me. I did a shot for shot recreation of the Take on Me music video for when I hit 100,000 subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
And so that one was at the time like a really big. I think that was like my first actual or one of my first shot for shots. It was my first full length cover, and so it was that was like a big moment for me. It was like this was me really pushing the boundaries of what I think I'm capable of doing.
Right.
So that's usually like my go-to answer when people ask, but I mean, I'm sure there are more covers recently. I mean, there are covers I put out recently that every once in a while I'm like, I'm really, really proud of this one. I mean, again, I'm never not proud of one, but yeah, I don't have a great answer, unfortunately, to the proudest cover I've ever put out, because it's just there are so many, and it's just I rarely ever have time to even think about them, just because I'm like, all right, next video, we're done with this one, move on.
Right.
So little time to think.
So then, yeah, I guess going off of that, then I mean, you mentioned you have these 2 videos coming out in the next few days, but do you, and you said you kind of tend to go, hey, what should be my next project, but do you have anything down the line that you're super excited to work on, or any upcoming
Absolutely
projects?
not a single thing. My life is basically, I'm just going with what gets thrown at me. So I have nothing planned. I mean, I don't have any. I was supposed to graduate college and have like a job lined up or something, but the world is kind of crazy right now. So I'm just kind of just sitting around hoping people still watch my stuff and give me suggestions. So no, I have no projects down the line. I am just surviving by the day.
Well, I mean, it's not a terrible life to be surviving off of. So
no, I'm living the dream. But yeah, I have very little planning in terms of videos. I never. They kind of thrive off of relevancy,
right.
And so I can't ever like have videos packed away that I can put out in case, because it's just like you need videos that are super relevant, or else they're gonna tank.
So then, I guess my last question in regards to your YouTube stuff is, so I kind of mentioned it earlier with like SpongeBob and Jack's films and all that, but what would you say was like the biggest, like, oh, holy shit, like, I've made it moment in context of stuff you've put out?
Yeah, I mean, I've made it moments. I'd have to think for a second. One moment that really stands out to me was the inventors and manufacturers of the automaton emailed me out of the blue one day. I mean, this was 2 years back maybe. And they said, hey, we love your videos so much, and thank you so much for making videos with our product, and we have this new like little toy prototype thing we're designing, and we want to send you a prototype of it for free.
Oh man,
and
that's so cool.
I was like at first I was like, can you prove to me that you're the actual people that you're saying you are? Because I'm like, I'm not going to get scammed by you guys and give you my mailing address. And when I realized that it was actually, the people from My Wodenki and Cube, and I was like, get out. These people see my videos. So that was like a really jarring, like, oh my gosh, the people that make this thing are, watching my videos, have seen my videos. And they've been very, very, very courteous over the past 2 years now. I mean, I have a deal with them that they let me use the automaton on merchandise, like the automaton image, because obviously I do not own the copyright to that. So
right.
they've been kind enough to allow me to use that on my merch. They've been kind enough to just always be reaching out to check in to see if there's anything they can help out with. So that was always really nice of them. So but I think the biggest like I made it moment was really the 100,000 subscriber milestone, because that was always a childhood dream of mine. When you see all those people getting their play buttons and getting their, I'm like, I want one. That would be cool.
Right.
To kind of have, something physical that says, hey, I did something. I did something with my time. I did something that other people thought was cool, and other than getting like Facebook comments, I'd really never gotten anything like that of like, some sort of validation that what you're doing is worthwhile. I mean, so
Right.
I mean that 100,000 subscriber milestone was a huge moment for me, because it's like that was a number that at one time seemed inconceivable, and then all of a sudden I'm looking at the subscriber count and it's like, well, yeah, what do you do next? I mean, 100,000, that's a lot of people. That I don't know that many people. I'll never know that many people. And here are all these people that come to subscribe to my channel. And I'm kind of detached now from the actual subscriber count. I mean, we're at like 640,000. It's like I can't even think of that as a real number. It's just basically a bunch of figures on a screen that I can process means like this many subscribers, but I never really step back to think about like 640,000, like, because that just freaks me out then. And that's a lot of people that I just cannot even comprehend, and I'll never be able to comprehend that these people are watching my stuff. So I mean, I feel like every day is the highlight of I've made it. Every day that I'm able to wake up and still do this is the I've made it moment.
Yeah, no, it's crazy to go from like that. Like I can conceive of 10 Facebook friends being super supportive of everything I've done, but now, holy shit, not like those that huge number like doesn't even need to necessarily be like in the comments that you're reading. It's just like seeing that 643K like underneath like your banner is just I can imagine it's crazy and super fulfilling.
Obviously I've become a little numb to it. I mean, that sounds very entitled, and I don't mean it to, but it's like that number. I've kind of learned to like not get too much in my head about it, because if I do really think about, like, if you were to put this in terms of people like sitting in a room watching my stuff or performing in front of people specifically, if you're like, okay, you're about to perform in front of 600,000 people, I'm like, I can't do it, So it's like I really have to not think about that number. Obviously, you want to watch the subscriber count grow, but at the same time, you kind of want to detach yourself and say, generally, I'm not going to think about it too much. I'm grateful for it, but I don't want to get too much in my head because I'll freak myself out.
Right, and there's also kind of a part of it, I'd imagine, too, where it's like you want to, I like to check your privilege is a bad term, but like sort of humble yourself with like never forget like where you came from and all that. I can imagine.
Absolutely. I try to like interact with fans as much as possible. I try to be as gracious with my time as possible. Like if people need favors, if people need just have questions, that's part of why I read the comments, is because I am very, very privileged to have an audience that comments actively on my videos. And so I want to read what they're saying. I want to hear what they have. If they have concerns, if they have praise, if they have criticisms, I want to make sure that I'm addressing those, because I don't want to I am very, very lucky to have this platform, and I want to make sure that I am taking care of the people that gave me this platform. So no, absolutely, check your privilege is absolutely a fair term, an absolutely fair term for this.
So then, yeah, all that is to say, if somehow you're still not subscribed to TheRealSullyG and yet you are subscribed to me, please go check out his channel. It puts out amazing stuff from, I guess now, from what used to be a bi-weekly schedule to almost every week. So
yeah, we'll see. I mean,
we'll feel it out.
When this video comes out, maybe you'll be like, he's gone back to the every 2 week schedule. How lazy of him. We'll see. I don't know what's gonna happen.
No. You work super hard on all of the videos that I've seen of yours. So I mean, it's definitely not you don't have to worry about that aspect of it at all. But I guess the one other question I usually ask every guest before we sort of get into the film discussion portion of the show, it just a sort of general everyone. I feel like everyone has like a core group of favorite movies, so I just like to ask what's your favorite movie or movies if you can't narrow it down to one.
Yeah, I mean, generally I mean, especially nowadays, I don't have a whole lot of time to watch movies. So I mean, like, I'm not super up to date with like recent movies and stuff like that because I'm just always working.
Mhm.
So I grew up and still love the Muppets, as cheesy as it sounds. The Muppet, any Muppet movie you can get that gets an A+ for me. That is like some of the best movies in my opinion. Like the original Muppet movie with Jim Henson. That is like a perfect movie in my mind. You know,
Mhm.
that is just a wholesome, wonderful movie, and that's the core of what family entertainment should be. I mean, I absolutely I love anything Muppet related. I mean, UHF, which I suggested to you. Spoiler alert if you didn't read the title. That's obviously a huge one. I mean, if not number one for me. I mean, that is one of my all-time favorites. I'm a huge Weird Al fan, and you know, I remember specifically going to Blockbuster when I was younger and getting that on VHS.
Mhm.
UHF finding it and being like, "Oh my gosh, they have it! I need to watch this movie." And the first time watching it, just going like, "This is insane! Like, how did this get made? This is amazing! It's just so like out there. It's like this is the best thing ever." So I mean, that was like revolutionary for me at the time that this kind of movie could be made. And that kind of like set the boundaries of, well, if this movie can get made, anything can get made.
In the best possible way too. Yeah.
In the best possible in the best possible way. It kind of like sets me like, you know what, I can, if this idea seems silly, I can make it because there's an audience out there that will love it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's the one thing, even beyond movies and just sort of like in content creation in general, is recognizing that there is an audience for relatively anything. It's just a matter of weeding
Absolutely.
everyone else out to find it. But
That is my channel in a nutshell. There's an audience for everything.
did you, side question, have you so I know that you've gotten to meet Weird Al a few times with like, I guess like concerts and
Yeah.
all that. Have you ever expressed your love for the movie to him?
I don't believe I've ever mentioned it like in a face-to-face conversation with him.
How many times
'Cause-
have you met him now?
I mean, all right, hold on. It's like 4 or 5, I think. 4 or 5. 1, 2.
Is it at the point where he recognizes you now?
I don't think so. I don't think so because I think I've spread it out long enough. I mean, I think it's been like 5 times between now and 2011.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, I've changed enough in between the times that if you look at the first photo of me and with him and the last one, it's like a different person. So I'm sure he does not know who I am, but that might be a good thing though.
Well, no, I was gonna say that could be an ultimate channel goal is to like cover Albuquerque or something on the
Oh yeah,
Automaton and then get him to sing over it.
yeah, serious. I was able to parody. I mean, cover Gangster's Paradise about a year and a half ago, or about a year ago, and I threw a lot of visual references into Amish Paradise. 'Cause,
Oh
I mean,
man.
and I think I did the same for Smells Like Teen Spirit. I did some Smells Like Nirvana parodies that are subtle enough that if you're not like super familiar with the source material, you're not going to catch them. But I get some comments saying, "Oh my gosh, he did this from the Weird Al video," and so it's like any chance I have to put in a Weird Al reference, I will throw one in there. I will absolutely love it.
So then I guess we can use that as our segue to shift into the film discussion portion of the show. So
Yes.
for anyone who is just tuning in for the first time, unfamiliar with how the show works, is I used to have a series on my YouTube channel where every month I would recommend a bunch of movies that I had watched lately, but that would get flagged for copyright all the time because I would show footage, and even though it's covered under fair use and all that fun stuff,
We love YouTube.
Yep, exactly. It wouldn't stop the claims. So I still want to do film discussion, so that's why we have this show. So every episode I recommend the guest a movie, the guest recommends me a movie, and we discuss. And as Gavin said earlier, the film that he recommended me was Weird Al's UHF. So tell us a little bit about this movie.
All right, so this was supposed to be. He claims that the studio built him up when this movie was in production and in post-production, that he was going to be like their next big star, that this movie was going to be the next big thing. and then it came out, and I want to say it opened opening weekend with a bunch of other big movies, huge movies, and it tanked at the box office.
Oh,
I mean, it was like, it just absolutely tanked, and they're like, okay, I guess we're not doing any more movies with you. And I mean, it was just, he was proud of the movie. They thought it was going to do well. It didn't do well. That company ended up going bankrupt later.
Oh, no.
So, I mean, it was just hyped up to be this huge movie, and it absolutely tanked. But many years later, when it was released on like VHS and DVD, it gained a cult following. So it's known as a cult classic film because now it's very popular in a small niche of people. But basically, it's a movie about someone, he and his best friend keep getting fired from jobs, and they want to build out this UHF station, this ultra high frequency station, television station. And there's an evil person that's trying to take over their studio, who's part of a larger studio. He wants to take over their station when it starts to get popular, and it's a wild ride. But it was basically a plotline excuse for Weird Al to parody a bunch of other movies and TV shows because, you know, you have that television format, so you can throw in commercials and really just kind of do some things that don't necessarily fit into the plot, but because it's a television
like
show,
World and all that.
Exactly, Spatula City. It's like that doesn't have a serious plot element, but it's a commercial because TV stations have commercials. So I mean, it's an excuse, really.
Exactly, yeah. And I like the little stuff like Conan the Librarian and the they do the thing where it's like when they find out they're number one in the ratings and they do like that quick flash of like, here's all our programming and all that, and it's just like ridiculous game shows and like reality segments.
It's absolutely, I mean, it's off the walls absurd, which obviously maybe at the time people just weren't ready for it. People weren't in the mindset to watch that kind of film.
Where would this, because I'm not super familiar with Weird Al's career, but like, where does this fall in terms of like, because I know he was like pretty big in the in like the 80s and 90s and all that, but like, where does this fall in sort of his like rise to popularity?
So this was in 89. So 89, he had released a bunch of albums by then, so he was already very well known.
Like,
so it was kind of like,
and all that.
It was one of those things that it says, well, you know, he's done all this, so now he should do a movie. So it's like it was the next step in possibly his career, but it didn't take off. So I mean, he then went back to music because it was like, you know, obviously that's not going to take off. That's not going to work out. But it, yeah, so I'm just peeking up the Wikipedia page because I'm not a know-it-all.
No, it's okay. I'm actually doing the exact same thing. Don't worry.
It says that the failure of the film left him in a 3-year slump, which was later broken by his inspiration to compose "Smells Like Nirvana." So it was before the Off the Deep End album. So obviously, I mean, he was already had songs like "Eat It" and "Fat" and stuff like that. But then he did this, and it almost killed his career, but it didn't. So,
thankfully, yeah.
Thankfully,
yes.
I
know you mentioned earlier because I think right above that it like lists everything. So this opened up against Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade, Ghostbusters 2, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Batman.
Yeah.
When Harry Met. So yeah. So this was. I
think he describes it as like the worst possible opening weekend slate ever. It's just like all these huge budget, big name movies, and then you have Weird Al in UHF, and it was just like, oh, this is a disaster.
But I mean, I think because some of my favorite movies of all time have a similar sort of story. Like The Thing is one of my favorite scary movies of all time, and that opened up, I want to say, either 2 weeks before or 2 weeks after E.T., so that just killed it. But I'm that sort of is a trend I find with like that sooner or later, again going back to that point of like there's an audience for everything. Sooner or later, the audience discovers it and it makes its big comeback one way or another. But
absolutely,
and I'm glad this one did because this is a really funny movie, like one of those sort of I don't want to say classic comedies, but like definitely like one of those like sort of like late 80s, early 90s, like wacky, off-kilter character comedies, but it is very unique.
You obviously don't go into it like expecting this like cinematic masterpiece. Like, don't go in with high expectations like that, and go in looking for a night of entertainment. That's what it is. It's just some mindless, just funny entertainment.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's very like I like too the because we mentioned like the little like cutaways with the TV station and all that. I like it does kind of take me out of it a little bit, but I do like how the sort of his like imagination sequences where like you parody like Rambo 2 and like the Raiders of the Lost Ark and all that. Like those are very, very funny. I had a professor in Kutztown. We took a comedy writing class, and I forget what the what the context of him showing this to us was, but we watched the first half of it. I think as like talking about like it was sort of like with classic comedy, but also I wish I could remember what the lesson was, but he hyped it up and made it it made sense with the cut. That was a horrible non-story. Sorry about that. But yeah, no, it was I remembered liking it a lot when I saw the first half of it. It kind of bums me out a little bit because if you're Dr. McKeag, if you're listening to this, how dare you let us not finish this? But yet you did have us finish King Ralph. That was a little bit of a. I wouldn't have picked that. I wouldn't have picked that movie. But yeah, no, it's I did. I very much enjoyed it. I liked the sort of film parodies that we like open and end on, and like the smaller ones that are throughout. The rock, like rolling rock gag, I enjoyed so much. I think I replayed that sequence after it was done because I just like he keeps on running past different matte paintings and
it's just
so funny, so like stupid, but again like in the best possible way.
Yeah, it's stupid humor, and I love it for it. It's like you just gotta go and be like, that was so stupid that it was brilliant, you know?
Yeah. And like
it transcends stupid.
Exactly, like the whole like there's like the moments with like the Twinkie hot dog thing and the
Twinkie wiener sandwich,
and when he makes the mountain out of the mashed potatoes, and he's like, "This means something." It's just like I don't know. There's just like beautiful little moments throughout that are just like, okay, that's like a product of its time for sure, but it's still I'm enjoying this a lot.
Oh yeah, the best thing is that at his live concerts he does a bunch of costume changes in between songs and stuff, and so they play videos from his career on this huge screen. I mean, where it comes to like references in modern TV shows or cameos in movies, and then occasionally they'll play like a clip from UHF, and the entire audience is reciting it word for word. I mean, like the Wheel of Fish. I mean, they're just like, do you want to take the box? Do you want to take the red snapper? What's in the box? And everyone in the audience is screaming, "The box! The box!" It's ridiculous.
That's one other thing too I like about it is that this is one of those movies where if you haven't seen it and then you sit down to watch it, you'll be like, "Oh, that's where that's from." Because there's a lot of moments in this movie that I recognized as like being included in like different YouTube videos as like sort of cutaway jokes and stuff like the "You're so stupid." Like that was one that I was like, "Oh, that's okay." I recognize that, but
that is one of my favorite quotes.
The meme quality of this movie is very
seriously
is definitely there.
Yeah, maybe they need to do another movie like that because it's the perfect time with all these everyone's short attention spans and stuff. They want those jarring cuts to different types of parodies.
Exactly.
It's the perfect time for UHF 2.
Exactly. It could be like he has to take over his own streaming service or something like that.
Although to be fair, he has said he will never ever make a UHF 2 just because he said people have so great memories of UHF, and UHF everyone loves that, and he says a sequel is never as good and it always taints the like legacy of that film. So he's like, I would never try to follow up UHF with a sequel. He's like, I'll gladly make another movie, but it's never going to be UHF 2 because you don't want to mess with everyone's memories of a perfect movie.
Right. And I think it is a shame, but you have to kind of admire that sort of artistic integrity. And, like, even just beyond that, Weird Al as, like, a person, like, whenever he talks about, I always ask the permission of the person I'm parodying if I can cover their song and all that, and if they like the whole Paul McCartney thing where it's like I forgot what the song was, but he's like
Live and Let Die, a parody called Chicken Pot Pie.
Exactly, and Paul McCartney being like, I don't want it to be about eating meat, and Weird Al's like, okay, well then I won't do it, but like that idea would have been really funny. But like that just speaks to his like artistic integrity as a person, so I can definitely admire something like that. But it's just UHF is again, it almost like I wouldn't mind seeing maybe like a spiritual successor if he ever does decide to make another movie, but it is like definitely something that could only exist in '89, and I'm glad that it does. Yeah,
it's one of those crazy films that you just can't believe it got made, but somehow it did.
Right.
Thank God it did, because the world is a better place for it.
Mm-hmm. And I just it's definitely a comedy I think everyone should see. It is a shame that it didn't do well, but again, like. But now it's done well. So exactly, it's found its
audience.
Yeah, so it's just a fantastic movie. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. If you guys haven't seen the movie yet prior to listening, which shame on you, why would you do that? You can watch it for free on Vudu. That's how I watched it. You can also rent it on iTunes, Google Play, Amazon Prime, and YouTube for $4. So. No excuse not to watch it. Definitely go check it out if you haven't seen it. It's
you came
really
prepared.
Funny.
you had all your statistics lined up.
I always that's one thing that I want to try and do is like because I used to with that previous series my gauge was like, is it on Netflix? Because like that's just what most people tend to watch. But I was like, okay, well. I don't have Netflix, so I can't really use that as my gauge. So, but yeah, no, I always try and make sure people have as many options as they can. So then, I guess moving on, if we're gonna talk about UHF as like this, like the good guy wins in the end, and everything, you can follow your dreams and everything's gonna work out, and it's gonna be really funny. I guess almost the antithesis of that is the movie I recommended Gavin, American movie by Chris Smith, which follows Mark Borchardt, who's an aspiring filmmaker from Wisconsin, and his misadventures trying to get his first feature film made, but then having to go back and make a abandoned short film to secure the funds to make the feature. So, what did you think of American movie?
It's just for the first like 10 minutes, because I didn't do any research on this. I just went in absolutely cold. I was just like, you told me that it was like a documentary, a comedic documentary, and I'm like, oh, he means mockumentary. And so then I'm like, I go into it, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be funny. And then like 10 minutes in, I'm like, wait, is this fake? I'm looking this up because I'm like, there's no way this can be real. Like some of the stuff that's happening, it's like this can't be real. I mean, and then I looked it up. I'm like, you're kidding. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna start over, go back to the beginning because I'm like, all right, now I have to go in with the mindset of like, okay, this is an actual thing that happened. It's so absurd at some points that I'm like, I mean, these guys, like I'm not one to judge on looks, but the first like the shot of Mark, it's like, okay, that's a character. I mean, that looks straight out of like a Napoleon Dynamite type character. I mean, just he's sitting in an RV and he just has like the long mullet mustache and those big glasses. I'm like, all right, no, come on, this isn't a real person. But sure enough, it is. And I mean, Mike doesn't seem like a human. He doesn't seem like an actual human character. I'm like, that's gotta be an act. But you like go on, and I'm like, it's not an act. This guy is genuinely like this. I mean, just casually talking about how he almost died because of a drug overdose. And he's just like, I have more fun stories to tell you if you'd like. I'm like, what is wrong with these people? it's absurd. It's wonderful. I mean, it's hysterical, but at some point it's just like, hey, this is depressing when you think about these what these people are going through. It's like we're laughing at it, but it's like this is I don't understand. I mean, just I felt like when Mark was just at the end of the shooting of Coven, he's just sitting in his car, like all depressed, winding up the footage. He's like, this is the last shot. I'm by myself. No one's here. I'm like, that's, I mean, hysterical in the context of just like framing it, but it's like, that's depressing, man.
Yeah, that's why I love it so much, is that sort of like tone where it, like, everything's working against you, like nothing's going right, but you just have this dream that you're so passionate about, and you have to march onward and make that movie so you can make your $13.95 rental sale to fund your next project.
And I was like, there were so many things in this that, as like a film student, gave me PTSD to like working on student films. I'm like, it was not okay. I'm like, I graduated from college. I'm done with this. And you're like, here's this movie that's gonna bring back all these bad memories. He comes in. He's like, hey, like, mom might need to film this. All my extras just dropped out the day before. And like, that literally happened to me freshman year, the night before a film that I was working on alone. All three of my actors dropped out the night before. I'm like, I don't want to remember this stuff. I don't need to remember this. And he's like, it's 11 a.m. We have 52 shots to go, and we're gonna do it. I'm like, and you know, on a film student set, you're like, we have 52 shots to do by 6 p.m. And by 6 p.m. you're like, we got 10 done, good enough.
Yeah, exactly. It definitely, even though it's such a product of its time, and there's like this whole thing of like, oh, we're shooting this on film, and here's all the difficulties of like working with this old clunky camera, and then like him going into the editing room, and it's literally like the hand crank reel and all that. Like everything is like you said, everything is super relatable to the modern day struggles. Like when you get to the core of it, it is, we're all kind of like this sort of angsty Mark Borchardt-esque character that's like, oh, I have a vision and no one understands, man. Like,
I feel him. I mean, I'm like in the same boat, kinda. Like I'm like I can relate in a sense to a certain extent, but you know, I just like his frustration when he's like in the kitchen trying to have his mom film like this really simple shot of him just like screaming and then running off frame, and it takes them like 20 minutes of her like, you're not in the frame, you left the frame, you're not, and he's just sitting there going, oh, Mom, am I in the frame yet? Am I just center me in the frame? I was just like, I can relate. I mean, like my parents were very competent with like technology, but it's like, as a kid, I was always just trying to have them do it, and like, if they did something even slightly wrong, I'm like, that's not what you're supposed to do. That's not what I have in mind. You're supposed to do it specifically like this. So I was just like, I just want to say, for the past couple days now, I've just been, any time that I'm like working and my mind just kind of goes blank, I just hear in the back of my head, it's all right. It's okay. There's something to live for. Jesus told me so. But of course with the, it's all right. It's okay. I'm like, oh god, just get the last words out. Oh, that was like the most painful scene for me. It was like, and they're like, they do like a hard cut. They're like, cut. They're like, take 32. I'm like, oh my god, they've been sitting there for 32 takes of him just. I want them to release an uncut version of that exchange. And by the end, Bill's just like, that's all you're getting from me. I'm done. And Mark's like, all right, well, go see what we got, and we got anything usable. And I'm like, spoiler alert, you got nothing. And I love at the very end when they show some of the actual finished film, and it's like, some of the ADR works well, and that line ADR just didn't work at all. Like, his mouth is so far off from his just, it's all right, it's okay. I'm like, this is, and I was
like
really
dub.
it was like a bad lip reading. I was really unsure if by the end of this film, what the outcome was going to be, whether we were going to have a happy outcome, like, this is the movie did well, or if it was going to be one of those things that, here's the premiere, and it shows the movie, and it's like so laughably terrible,
right.
And the audience is like laughing at it even though it's not supposed to be funny, and it's just like, just this, I was like, I couldn't tell where this ending was about to go. Like, is this going to be an actual success, or is it just going to be the biggest, most hysterical failure, like a train wreck you can't look away from?
Right. And I'm glad that because it would be. I love that like the whole title American movie, like it really does reinforce like that idea of like, because Mark mentions it a lot, where like this is America, I have this dream and I'm gonna go out and do it and I can make something of myself, and it's like and like you said, you're so worried the entire time of like he's gonna go out and like he's gonna put all this work in, and then like 8 people are gonna show up in the theater and they're gonna be laughing at it, and the crew's gonna want to like distance themselves, but like I do enjoy that it was like somewhat successful, even though you could argue that he kind of squandered the success of what he got.
I was like, people seem to be happy with the result. I mean, like, there were so many people lining up. I was like, first of all, I was surprised that many people showed up. I was expecting they were gonna be like, big premiere, and like 2 people showed up, and it was gonna be a disaster. But there was a huge line of people, and then after the film, they were cheering and clapping and listening to his speech, and I'm like, is this a happy ending? Are we getting a happy ending in this film? This is crazy.
Right.
And did he sell 3,000 units? I don't think they ever mentioned.
I think that they made their money, and unfortunately when Uncle Bill passed, he left Mark some money, but
yeah, I saw that.
That's
50,000.
Yeah. To this day, unfortunately, Northwestern has still never been made, despite Mark still working in film today. So
I'd love for like 20 years down the line, that film gets made, like gets finished, and it's like so jarring that like the character walks into a store, and it's like young Mark walking into a store, and then it goes to a close up, and he's like 40 years older, and it's and just don't address it. No one address it. Just make it so it's like, oh, like count the continuity errors in like the gaps of filming. That'd be fantastic. I think you just got to reframe the movie with that idea in mind of just this movie was shot over the course of like 50 years.
Exactly, yeah. But it's just it is fantastic. It's it is like, even though it does have like this big kind of I don't know, like sadness to it, I guess, where it's like, oh man, this guy is not like, nothing's going right for him. Like, even though, like it is kind of heartwarming in that like he just will not give up. And I love that.
There's a completely different mindset when you watch it. I mean, like, even that first 10 minutes when I watched it thinking it was fake, and then rewatching it knowing it's real, like, you have a completely different perception on how the film is viewed. Like, him opening up the film saying, like, I'm a failure. I'm like, that's funny. Like, that's a funny way. But then when you reframe it as watching it as real, it's like, oh, that's kind of sad. He's like, I'm a failure. I can't do anything, but I'm going to keep trying. It's like, it's funny at first, but then when you think of it as a real person, trying to make what they want, it's like, oh, that's kind of depressing.
Right. But again, I like that it is kind of, it's not sad in the way of like he's gonna fail. Like, there's like that desperate sort of hope of like, oh, you can do it, we believe in you, and then it like doesn't maybe work out quite the way that he wanted, but like it's still qualifiable as success. And it
is still qualifiable as a film,
the bare minimum. That's one of my favorite lines too, is when he I have it right here, when he's there's no excuses. No one has ever paid admission to see an excuse. No one's ever faced a black screen that says, well, if we had these set of circumstances, we would have shot the scene. So please forgive us and use your imagination. I've been to the movies hundreds of times. That's never occurred. So
that seems like script writing. That seems like something you would read right out of a comedic script. Sometimes I'm like, I just can't believe these are real people.
Exactly.
And this is their real lives. I'm like, I've been to the movie theater hundreds of times. That's never happened. Like, why do you feel the need to like specify that? Like, I'm pretty sure we all understand what you're saying, but you have to specify. There's been there, never seen that happen.
Exactly.
I'm like, this is so absurd. I was like, this can't be real.
And it's so quotable too. Like, there's like so many lines that like try to put your head through there, man. Like Mark alone, like you could fill an entire book like just listing like every quotable thing he has in this movie. It's so good.
I'm trying to think what was he had a word for Mike that he was smashing a car, and he was like, Mike was smashing the car, and Mark said, "Oh, is that cathartic to you, Mike?" "Yeah." "Do you know what cathartic means?" "No." I'm like, oh my god. I'm like, what are these people doing? And he's like, it means you're getting a lot of anger. And he's like, then yes, it was cathartic. I'm like, why would you just say yes? Like,
Mike is just, oh man, like Mike is the unsung, and I love that like all of the music in the movie is him too. Like every piece of music is something like Mike just kind of threw together. Like it's so, man, it's too good.
Yeah, he is.
And then when they're doing like the ADR and like because the whole movie he's like, yeah, just like he's like so quiet, and then he just like lets out this demonic scream. Yeah,
that was insane. I was like, that was again one of those things that I'm like, this can't be reality. Like this is, like that is character writing. That's like this person that is so quiet, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, here's their big breakout moment. But it's like, no, this is real life. He's just crazy. And then immediately after the screen, they're like, good. He's like, thanks.
Thanks, man.
I'm like, and he's back to normal. And we got Mike back again. There he is.
You couldn't even try to write something as
I know,
as unique as this.
At that point, yeah, there's so much. It's just like, usually it's like writing. You can't write this stuff. It's like you literally cannot write this stuff just because it's so out there that you would write it and they'd say, but no one would actually say that in this scenario. So let's take that line out because no one would actually say that. And Mark's like, hold my beer, I'll say that.
Yeah, exactly. There's nobody who would. I'm trying to find. I was looking at the IMDb like of all the well-known lines or whatever. You can't write. You guys got to look more menacing. Can you be more menacing with like to the people who are just in black hoods off in a field?
Oh my god! It's just and it's like they're all in the field like in snow and they're setting up a shot, and then Mike comes in and he's like, Can you put my soda on the tarp so it doesn't get frozen? I would like to drink it afterwards. I'm like, is that really your main concern right now?
Or like in that same scene where he's like, hey, Mike, can you go around and make sure everyone has their gloves? And Mike just turns on.
Do you have brown gloves?
Do you guys have your gloves?
I'm like, and this, again, one of those moments where I'm like, I have to pause it and go, but it's real, right? I'm like,
it is.
I had to look up a couple times to just verify I wasn't reading someone's opinion on it. Like, I'm like, this is a documentary, not a mockumentary, right? And like, everything is like, yeah, that's, I'm like, obviously, I mean, I was watching a little while ago, there was a documentary on SNL, and like on the process of that, and Lorne Michaels says, like, obviously, he's like, what you're seeing in this, what your cameras are getting is a little bit different than what happens around here every week, because
right.
when those cameras come out, you become a bit of a character. You kind of put on a bit of an act. So I'm like, I'm curious how much different these people are in real life. I have a feeling, not very much, but it's like some of it, I'm like, they had to be playing that up for the kid. Please tell me they were just playing that up. Please tell me that wasn't actually crossing their mind.
Yeah, no, I think that like there's definitely that kind of does exist for most people, where like I'm gonna sort of accentuate my personality to like because I know I'm being recorded and all that. And I think that Mark definitely has that. I think he's probably much more quiet and like maybe a bit more like high on himself if he's not being recorded. But I think Mike genuinely is that just sort of quiet, unassuming guy. Yeah. But no, it's just such a great movie, and
it's fantastic.
And it is very like I keep on saying it's very sort of. There's definitely moments where you're like, oh, that's a little. Maybe a little bit too real, maybe a little too depressing, but the thing I love about it is that like anytime I watch it, I'm like, oh man, I gotta get back to work. I gotta make something, because like, I'm so inspired by this random guy from Milwaukee who's gonna go out and change the world with his little short horror movie. But which, speaking of which, because I think you mentioned earlier, if you do want to see the full thing, you can find Coven on YouTube. It's about like 40 minutes long, and it's not. I think it's worth it as a good like little supplemental experience to the movie. But it's I think Northwestern is what we all eventually would like to see someday.
The real question, you said Coven is good as supplemental material for the movie. Do you think it stands on its own?
No.
No.
I think if you just found it and watched it on its own, you'd be like, oh, that's a okay, that was weird.
Yeah,
but
that was 40 minutes.
that was 40 minutes of my life gone by. But yeah, like with knowing like when you watch Coven and then you see like that shot of like him screaming and he's like kind of out of frame, you're like, oh yeah, that's because his mom was behind the camera.
Exactly.
Right there.
You can kind of there are things to look out for.
Right. And yeah, it's just yeah, American Movie and Coven, they're both like, if you do like a little double feature, it's really fun. Yeah. But at the very least, people should check out American Movie because it's just man, it's inspiring, it's funny. It gives you a nice shot of reality, but at the same time, I think it inspires the dreamer and a lot of people like you and I who go out and make creative stuff like this for a living. So, if you want to watch American Movie and you haven't yet, you can watch it on iTunes for $4. I don't usually when you Google a movie, it'll tell you like all the different platforms, but it's only telling me iTunes. How did you watch it?
Yeah, I looked around. There wasn't, for some reason. I mean, like if you go on like Amazon, it's like it's not available in your country. I'm like, really? I mean,
that's
on most places where it's like linked, like they at least have a page for it, it says it's not available in the U.S. So I was able to actually find a link to it. On Reddit, on the documentaries subreddit, there was a discussion about it, and there was a link to the movie. I don't even know what site it was, but I was like, there it was, and I was like, wonderful. There it is. I mean, probably not the most legal link ever, but I'll take it.
So then, Mark, if you're listening to this, please make your movie available for the
yes, Mark.
public.
I will watch it again. I just need a place to watch it.
I know that he's active on YouTube, but he hasn't uploaded in I think years. I think it's a lot of his kids are like helping him upload stuff. Cause
hey, Mark, let's do it. Let's do a collab, Mark. Come on, come to my channel. You want to get featured on a cover? I'll do the score for your next movie.
That'd be amazing. I think
only on Automaton for Northwestern.
The Northwestern is like a movie made in like the early '90s, has this like very modern score. Like that'd be so good.
Genius. It's genius.
Well, I mean, you might be able to shoot your shot because according to the Wikipedia, it's still in production since the year 2000. So
God bless him.
That window is still open for you. But
oh God.
Yeah, so that's American Movie, and that's the 21st episode of the Watchlist Podcast. Gavin, thank you so much for doing this, man. I really appreciate it. I had a blast. Absolutely. I'd love to have you on again if our schedules line up and you have more funny, interesting movies you want to talk about.
I'm sure I do. I'd be happy to be another guest someday.
Hey everybody, sorry to break the immersion again, and unfortunately actually it's going to happen again next week at the end of that episode as well, but the order of the guests and recommendations got moved around, so I'm trying my best to reorganize things, and I think I have everything figured out. So next week we're going to have on filmmaker, producer, and distributor AJ Mattioli of Mattioli Productions, a production company centered around LGBTQIA representation, and he recommended me 2 films from his production company, the short film Neon Boys, and the full-length feature film Your Eyes on Me. As for my recommendation, I recommended him Sean Baker's Tangerine, so if you want to be in on the conversation for next time, definitely watch those movies beforehand. Now, back to the show. Yeah, again, Gavin, thank you so much for doing this. I had a blast, and thank you guys for watching the Watchlist Podcast. We'll see you next time.